goodness. Big move Monday. Look out. A way to end the tournament.
Hey, everyone. It is Austin. I am here with freshly named Army West Point head coach, Troy Nickerson. Coach, thanks for joining in. Appreciate you taking your time out of your little vacation there you have in the great state of Hawaii.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Austin.
Yeah, just wanted to, I know you've been busy doing camps and clinics here and there, your vacation, so I wanted to wait and catch you on a good time here and just really wanted to talk Army wrestling. You know, that job opened up a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point. The news came out, Coach Ward was going to step down. I wanted your thoughts on, when that job became available, was that an immediate, hey, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring, or was this something, let me talk to my family. This is a big move for us here. What were your thoughts going in there?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to leave somewhere when you've been there for 11 years. I mean, we were pretty well established in Greeley and, really loved our time at UNC. The reality is I've had different job opportunities every year, right, over those past 11 years. And, for me, there was a short list, of programs that I would be interested in. And Army was definitely on that list. And so when I saw, Kevin was stepping away, there was some immediate interest. And, they reached out to me almost immediately as well, right? So, I mean, those conversations started happening. And from there, it was just really a fast and furious pace to, get to the finish line where, I accepted the job and just really looking forward to this opportunity, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm always curious, and because having a wife and young kids myself, it's like, how does that conversation happen? Do you bring roses? It's like, hey, honey, here's an opportunity here. Yeah, how did that go down, and how does she react?
I mean, my wife has been great throughout this entire process. I mean, she really knew what she was getting into with marrying me, which I think is a big plus, because it's a tough life. It's not easy by any means. It's not easy on her. It's not easy on my kids, but it's what we're in, right? So she knew it was certainly a possibility, and she knows that I'm not willing to make any change that isn't right for our family first, right? And there was a lot of unknowns just with West Point. One being on the East Coast, two living on post, raising our family on post, what that actually looked like. But I think after being there on post and just seeing kind of the makeup of how everything looked, she was all in. She was all in, and it was just going to be a great opportunity for us to raise our kids around some really high quality individuals, which is, I think, something that was really attractive. But the other piece of that was just, again, I mean, making sure that everybody was happy with it. And, that's part of the reason we're out here in Hawaii right now. I'm doing a couple clinics and making sure that we get a little family time as well before we kind of start this journey.
Yeah, family. I mean, family's always important. We've seen coaches turn down jobs because, it wasn't right for their family, or they had certain things that going on that they just couldn't make it work. So, I don't think the wrestling moms get enough credit, so props to Mrs. Nickerson and the family there making that jump with you. It speaks volumes there. My next thing was, we talked a little bit about Coach Scott Green. Kind of one of the finalists for this job. Obviously, he didn't get it. You got this job, and you guys have a relationship that goes way back. So maybe you give a little minute long spiel about how you know him, how well you know him, and how important was it to keep a guy like Scott Green, who's been at Army for a while, helps foresee this program grow. How important was that to keep him on staff with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, I mean, I've known Scott for 30 years. He was actually my freestyle and Greco coach growing up. So I think kind of coming through the same system in a sense, right? I think our ideologies are very similar, right? We kind of see the sport in the same light. And I think having that continuity is extremely important, So after everything was kind of done, official, Scott was my first call. I kind of wanted to see where he was with everything, and let him know that, hey, I know the value that you bring to this program. You have obviously been very successful in making this program where it's at, right? You've been an integral part of that. um, you know, what does that look like for you staying, right? And we had multiple conversations over the first, week or so about what that looked like. And I'm very fortunate that he's going to be staying on with us, because I think he does a phenomenal job. He's one of the best coaches in the country, and he understands the landscape of Army West Point, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm trying to adjust to right now, is just understanding how this place operates, and the different intricacies of managing the cadets' lives, both on the mat and off the mat. And Scott he already knows that, right? So um, I think when you're in my shoes, typically when you're taking over a new program, it's usually kind of like a dumpster fire, right? And that's not the case here at all. This is probably the best West Point team that I've seen in the past 20 years. And I'm not looking to come in and burn the place to the ground and make all these big changes. I think what's working well is working well for a reason. We're going to continue, kind of business as usual. I'll kind of put my little personal touch on it here and there, but at the end of the day, we're not looking to make huge changes. It's, kind of business as usual.
Yeah, because Coach Scott Green has mentioned in other interviews that other teams did reach out to him, see what his feelings were, if he was interested in staying, and what that was. So I'm sure a few gift cards to Wegmans, from you helped solidify that deal. So it's
Yeah,
good to
I
keep
mean,
him around.
that's the nature of this business. Excuse me. I mean, if you do a great job, you're going to have opportunities, and I think, some opportunities are good opportunities. Some maybe don't make as much sense, but, this is a place where I know Scott feels like, we're making great progress, but there's a lot of work left to do. And I think he sees the same vision for this program that I do, that there's a lot more upside to this program than where they're currently at. And, I'm just excited to have him along that journey with me to take this to another whole different level.
Yeah, it's actually a good transition. What I want to touch on next is, just the current Army West Point team. They've been top 25 in the dual rankings the past few years, and ended up with All Americans on the podium every now and then. So what does it feel like walking into a program, like you said, that's not a dumpster fire? Everyone there has high standards on and off the mat. You kind of know what you're walking into. And just having Coach Scott Green there, like you said, just kind of a little more familiarity with the whole process. How does it make you feel coming into a program like that?
Comfortable. I think knowing that, what's happening is working just, puts me at ease a little bit, that, hey, there's not these drastic changes I do have to make, and try to figure out how do we make it work for this year, but how do we continue to make it sustainable for the long term as well, right? So I think we have 8 returning national qualifiers on our roster right now. For me, priority, number one, right behind Scott, was making sure I got on the horn with all of our current cadets and getting to know them, right? Really developing relationships, and, seeing, even asking them, what do you feel like is going well? What do you feel like could be improved on? Right. And just getting their take. And I think I don't think it's been a coincidence that some of the best wrestlers I've ever coached are the best communicators. Right. And just developing those relationships is crucial for me. We have a big roster. We've got a 50+ roster, and just getting to know what makes each and every individual tick, because it is different, right, for each guy, just so we can help them reach their goals at the highest level. I mean, that's been the priority for me. I've probably gotten on the phone with all but maybe 3 or 4 of our guys, which has been difficult in and of itself, right? Because our guys during the summer, that they are all over the world right now, right? Doing these leadership details. I've talked to guys in Korea, Japan, Germany, like literally all over the world, right? And I even had a couple cadets that are stationed down at Fort Carson last week, and I went down and saw them and got in front of them. I guess it was about a week and a half ago. So we had lunch together, and just developing those relationships is priority number one, and just making sure that these kids feel comfortable and that they are valued, and, just feel like they are a part of this process as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's no secret you guys are doing the right things up there, and helping contribute to that is your incoming recruiting class. latest class of intermat ranked them number 18th in the country, which, until Coach Ward and Coach Green really came in, you didn't really see that too often, so you got fresh young bloods coming in, you got a nice setup there with the guys coming back. So I'm not sure if you have any insight on what kind of makes recruiting different at Army compared to any other school. What are the differences there when trying to recruit guys?
Yeah, I think talking to our current cadets, right, the biggest thing that has come up for me is our guys like doing hard things, right? And I can relate to that because I remember, back in the day committing to Cornell and having coaches tell me, Big Ten coaches, hey, you'll never reach your goals at that place, right? It won't happen, right? And for me, kind of put a chip on my shoulder, like, watch me, right? And so I know that you can win at the highest level at a place like Army West Point. And, we're looking for that right type of cadet who he wants to come in. He wants to get, a degree from the preeminent leadership institution in the world and really set themselves up for a great future, because that's really what this place does. And the amount of support that we have for these cadet athletes is incredible. And, they are making a commitment that's bigger than themselves. And it just adds to our overall culture, our brotherhood within our program, and being able to help them reach their goals, their athletic goals at the same time. It's just icing on the cake.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about brotherhood. You guys have a little mantra there, BHA. Explain kind of what that is. Like you said, everyone's kind of in it for the same thing. It's bigger than wrestling, as Coach Green always says, Coach Ward always said. It's something bigger than wrestling. So what does that really mean now that you're kind of in the thick of it there?
Yeah, so I mean, BHA, it's an acronym. It stands for Brotherhood, Heart, Attitude, Warrior, right? And I think it really exemplifies what these cadets are, right? And what they do on a daily basis. And one of the things that really attracted me to this place, and, with having these conversations with these cadets also, with that kind of what's going really well right now standpoint, that culture, that brotherhood continues to be brought up. And I know, just being kind of in the public sector the past 11 years, with the changing landscape of college athletics, everybody wants to talk about culture. It's not real. It's not, right. With the transfer portal, with NIL, there's a lot of just everybody looking out for themselves, right. And our culture is real at West Point, and I think it's a lot easier to reach your goals when, you're doing alongside your brother who's doing exactly the same thing as you, right? So that's something we're going to continue to build off from. And I think it just makes it that much easier and more fun when you're doing it right beside your brother. And, this is a hard sport. I always tell people, I mean, that the process to becoming an All-American, winning a national title, it's not some secret sauce, right? I mean, for me, I've done it as an athlete. I've coached guys that have done it. I know how to make champions on the mat, but having those outside qualities that I think make great wrestlers, those are already instilled in every one of our cadets. And for me, the coaching piece, it just gets that much easier when you don't have to worry about a lot of those outside distractions.
Yeah, I myself wrestled in the IWA and wrestling against Army and even Navy guys. I knew I was in for a battle, whether I was wrestling the starter that was a national qualifier or the third, fourth string guy. I was going to be wrestling 7 minutes if I didn't pin or tech the guy. So now that I'm on the other side of it, on the media end, there's some of my favorite guys to watch is Army and Navy, because they're going to wrestle their butts off. Whether they're up 14-0, down 14-0, you know what you're kind of getting when you're going to battle, pun intended, with these guys, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the core of who we are, right? Is we're going to wrestle hard. We're going to be in shape. We're going to battle you for 7 straight minutes. And, the nice thing with our team, right? I mentioned we have a 50+ roster right now, is our depth is real, right? We have multiple guys at every weight that are going to go out there and they're going to fight you. So having that type of depth, I think that makes us a much better dual meet team. But then also it's helping each individual reach their goals, right? I have so much respect for my training partners when I was coming up through the ranks, because they pushed me every day to reach my goals. And I was fortunate enough that I got the opportunity to toe the line every weekend, and a lot of them didn't, right? And this is a hard sport. I don't know if I could do it not being the guy, right? Like it's extremely hard. So I value, those guys that aren't getting on, one of the 10 guys that are getting on the mat every week more than probably the guys that are, just because what they're doing for our program, our team is crucial to our success. And having options at every weight class, that's fun, because that's something I haven't been used to in the past.
Yeah, you talked to the depth, and there were a few position battles. Just using last year's reference, a few weight classes that were, who's going to get the spot at the end of the year? You're throwing different guys out, and both those guys would be injured. A third or fourth guy would come in. It's like, who is this guy? And he'd win a big match or like keep it close with someone. So like you mentioned, the depth that you have, everyone push each other. It's such a good thing you guys have there, and just knowing that whoever you throw out there, they could be two weight classes lower than what they're wrestling now. They're gonna wrestle their butt off, man. It's awesome to see.
Absolutely. That's not going to change either. We're going to continue to fight our butts off every time.
I like that. I like good tough wrestling. Doesn't always have to be pretty, but you know what you're getting. Um, Wanted to move on to a little bit of Army and Navy. It's a long historic rivalry in every sport that they do, not just wrestling, obviously. Want to get your thoughts on, before getting this job, what were your thoughts on that rivalry and what it meant? And then, now that you had the job, do you see that rivalry maybe a little bit different?
Absolutely. I thought before I took this job, I had seen rivalries before, right? So my time at Iowa State, I was part of the Cyhawk series, right, with Iowa and Iowa State. And I thought that was a big rivalry. It wasn't until I actually was on post and I saw about 300 beat Navy signs that I realized, man, this is real, right? This is huge. So it only amplifies the what that means to West Point, what it means to the athletic department, what it means to all of our alumni. That is a big match. But I'll reiterate what General Gilland, our superintendent, told me, when I was out there is, obviously we want to beat Navy, Air Force, the other military academies every time out there, right? But at the same time, if we go 2-10 every year, it doesn't feel great, right? So for us, I mean, we're going to be training for, getting on that podium, being All-Americans, national champions. And, not that I'm certainly trying to downplay the Navy match, because it's important, but we're going to make sure that we're ready to go each and every time out there, and we're going to be fired up. And I think Coach Ward, like I said, I'm in a phenomenal spot where he's really set it up for success. Historically, Navy's kind of had our number, but Coach Ward really turned the tables there, right? And we want to continue on that path and making sure that, we don't lose that dual meet ever again.
Yeah, it's one of those rivalries, like you said, it's heated, but it's not what I'll call ugly, where there's a lot of bad mouth, like, naughty bad mouthing and really bad name calling. They keep it pretty PG there. And the overall goal of that is to serve America and protect America, right? So, we're coming up on July 4th here. So I just think it's cool to mention that too. Like, hey, you guys lose the game, but there's next year you come back, but there's also a greater goal in mind here between both of these schools. So it's just one of those unique rivalries. It's heated, but I don't think it gets ugly, unless there's stuff I don't really see, but really cool rivalry. And it's awesome that you're a part of it now. So excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean that's what's great about sport, right? And there's a fantastic picture in my athletic director Theo's office, from last year's Army Navy match, and you see all the cadets mat side in the background. And I mean, I'm looking forward to being a part of that environment. I mean, I can only imagine it from a fan perspective. I mean, as a coach, you don't really get to be in it as much, right? Because you're doing your job, but we want to create an environment where, Crystal Arena is a tough place to wrestle, and I think we're well on our way.
Yeah, I always give props to your broadcaster, Nikolai. I'm not sure if you watch matches, but yeah, even Coach Ward said he doesn't know a whole lot of wrestling X's and O's, but he gets the fans excited and he has these great one-liners. He's entertaining as all. So anyone watching that can't make a match in person, make sure you watch the matches when they're streamed, because Nikolai is one of the best in the business here.
And I think that's what's really important with our sport. You know, I mean, a lot of us purists, you know, see it and appreciate just the sport in and of itself. But, you know, we're really trying to create an event out of our home matches, and we want to make it one of the best environments in the country. So we want people to come back. And there's very few people, when you make it an event like that I've been around, that didn't know wrestling, and they say, hey, I don't want to go back to that. That wasn't fun, right? I feel like it's the opposite. Everybody's like, wow, that isn't what I thought it was, right? And that was amazing. When's the next match? And that's the type of environment we're looking to continue to create and cultivate.
Yeah, good. I see it every year. I got to get to one of these matches. It just falls on, you know, it's always around my birthday, Valentine's Day weekend. I'm always busy with family stuff, but
It's a
I got to
great
make
date
time
night.
to get up there.
It's a great date night for you and your wife. We'll get you
Yeah,
out.
it is. Yeah, a little weekend away. Keep the kids at home. That'd be great. Last thing I kind of wanted to touch on here was, you know, just EIWA. You compete in there when you wrestled at Cornell, when the Ivies were still part of that. Now that the Ivies branched off, EIWA looks a little bit different. You know, so what's it like coming back to this historic conference that's over 100 years old now, as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting. You know, I think they've done a really great job in the EIWA, you know, building this thing up. You know, we're getting a lot more structure. I was on a conference call 2 weeks ago where, you know, we're looking to, you know, branch off into divisions and really solidify the conference. And for me, being able to, you know, compete for a conference championship is critical towards our success. And you know, there's obviously some great programs in there with Navy, with Lehigh, who's really kind of been at the top right now. We want to be able to be competitive with those teams, not in the future, but right away. You know, and we're going to make sure that we're ready to go for that conference tournament each and every year. And again, it's just exciting to be in a conference where, you know, we've got a chance, right? We've got a chance to bring home a conference championship. And you know, it's not just about a couple individuals. Like I say, we've got 8 returning qualifiers on our lineup for this year. You know, I think we can be very competitive right away.
Yeah, it's going to be a good year. I like the conference or the divisions within the conference that we're kind of pretty much finalizing here, and then we're going to do crossovers. It's still kind of getting worked out, I know, but yeah, it's good that what they're doing here to kind of get, you know, participation from all the teams and making sure that there's the division champs and then there's conference champs overall at the tournament. So kind of still a little bit of a work in progress, not totally finalized. But yeah, it's coming along here, and adding Morgan State to the conference, I think, was great. You know, just a new program, getting in there and just kind of mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be exciting. You know, I've definitely got some ideas from being in the Big 12 the past 10 years. You know, I think we can kind of, you know, mimic that in a sense and really create a great environment where these kids feel like they're prepared going into the national tournament.
Yeah, awesome. Exciting stuff for the IWA and Army West Point coming up ahead. Coach, that's kind of much all I had on the agenda. Anything else you kind of want to sign off with and shout out or whatever you got to do?
I mean, really just for me, I mean, I'm just excited to get started on this journey. You know, I think this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. We've got a great system already in place. Like I said, continuing to look to add to that and build this program. I mean, I think with the direction college athletics is headed, I don't think anybody is positioned better than Army West Point. And I've got great leadership. Really just excited to get started on this journey and really take that next step.
Awesome. Well, there it is. Coach Troy Nickerson, Army West Point, new head coach. Can't wait for you to get started on site full time and, you know, really get going. Thanks for the time and appreciate it.
Thank you, Austin.